ISIL's momentum has indeed been blunted, its ability to mass and maneuver forces degraded, its leadership cells pressured or eliminated, its command and control and supply lines severed. Despite these successes, the president has made clear that there's going to be ebbs and flows in this fight, that this wouldn't never be something that was going to be short-term in duration.
That is Eric Schultz, White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary, commenting today about ISIS and its progress or lack of progress, as we get words that it has been very successful in its efforts to take Ramadi. Let's talk about it with our panel. Jason Riley, columnist with the Wall Street Journal. Charles Lane, opinion writer for the Washington Post. And Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review. Welcome, gentlemen. Jason, I'll start with you. How significant is this, what we're hearing out of Ramadi?
It's very significant, and that is what we just heard is spin, pure and simple. It's spin. This is a very big deal. It would be a huge setback. Ramadi is an Anbar province. It's the largest province in Iraq, and Ramadi is one of the few areas where the government still has some control. So this would be a very big victory for ISIS. There's also a morale element here. We lost around 1,300 soldiers and Marines in Anbar province when we went in after 2003. I mean, what are the families thinking about? What is ISIS taking over this? What has happened under Obama? What are the other soldiers who survived thinking about what's occurred under this administration? So I think this is a very big deal.
Well, and Chuck, this is not without warning. I mean, for months we've been hearing that it was very possible that Ramadi was in danger of being taken over, at least in part.
Yes, in fact, there were a mass exodus from Ramadi at various points when the population became panicked by rumors that ISIS was on the way, and then everybody moved back in because they thought ISIS had been repelled. I think it's a troubling development. I'm not sure it's quite the disaster yet that Jason says, but I think it's wrong, as some have been doing in the administration, to dismiss it as a propaganda victory, because after all, that's in a way what this war is all about, is propaganda. It's the ability of ISIS to project an image of strength. And it's true they've taken a lot of hits from the U.S. airstrikes. They have been degraded. But maybe in a way the message they're trying to send is that even after taking all those blows from the world's superpower, we're still capable of penetrating Ramadi and knocking over this government building. So what would impress me would be some evidence that the Iraqi government is capable of a counteroffensive to drive them out. And we'll just have to wait and see if they can pull that off.
Yeah, and Jonah, I mean, this area is significant logistically for a number of reasons, supply lines and all kinds of things. But for the press secretary to stand up and say they've been blunted, we've stopped their ability to mass, to maneuver forces, to do anything on the day that we're hearing the same news, is it some kind of disconnect for you?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jason that it is absolutely spin, and I agree with Charles that we don't know for sure that they're actually on the verge of taking Ramadi. This may be the equivalent of the Tet Offensive, which was an enormous propaganda victory for our enemies, but not that great a military one. We just don't know yet. But there's another thing that's going on here, which is that the more it even appears that ISIS is having success in Anbar province and in Ramadi, the more difficult it is to rally the Sunni tribes together to stand up and resist ISIS, and it becomes all the more inviting for them to sort of cut deals and get co-opted by ISIS. And at the same time, this is all against the backdrop of Obama's attempts at détente with Iran. And you're never going to get the Sunni tribes to stand up and fight ISIS if A, they think that the Iraqi government is just simply a puppet of Iran, or B, if they think their choice is between being led by brutal Sunnis or being led by brutal Iranians who are Shia. And so there's a huge diplomatic political problem that this creates if there's even a sense that ISIS is going to take over Anbar province.
And to the point of marshaling allies in the area or giving them reassurances, of course, the president this week meeting with Gulf states. We want to play a little bit more of what he had to say last night about those meetings and about efforts to draw them together and make them feel that we are a trustworthy ally in this.
Ending the tensions in the region and resolving its devastating conflicts will require a broader dialogue, one that includes Iran and its GCC neighbors. And so a key purpose of bolstering the capacity of our GCC partners is to ensure that our partners can deal with Iran politically, diplomatically, from a position of confidence and strength.
Jason, they certainly don't seem, at least publicly, to have confidence in our ability to assist them or our willingness to assist them in that effort.
I think this is I think the president is worried. I think this whole summit was a sign of desperation. These Arab states do not feel we'll have their back. And it's been very interesting to watch Sunni Arab states sort of move away from Obama's position and toward Israel's position when it comes to this Iran deal. They think a nuclear Iran is simply untenable. So I think this is a sign of desperation by the president. I think he's worried. And let's remember, Obama's other huge diplomatic fail this year has been Syria, where we learned that Assad does still have chemical weapons and is still using them on civilians. Remember that red line? That's one of the reasons he's having difficulty, I think, convincing the Sunni Arab states.
And where in Syria, ISIS is actually gaining territory. So I mean, it may be on its heels in Iraq, may not be, but it's definitely gaining in Syria.
But to the point of the chemical weapons, Chuck, the president was very clear about that being a red line. We've talked about it a number of times, but what does it signal to people who are much closer in that neighborhood to all of those threats out of Syria, out of Iran?
Well, I think people all over the world were a little flabbergasted when the president backed off that red line, going back many months now. But to bring it back to this GCC meeting, this is kind of a disaster. This was supposed to be a high-level summit involving the leaders, the king of Saudi Arabia, who's really the big cheese in the GCC. He snubbed the president.
We thought he was coming.
He said he was coming. The White House announced he was coming, and then he said, after all, I've got to take care of something back home.
He had to catch up on Downton Abbey.
Well, we understand.
Well, in any case, the problem there is that there seemed to have been some expectation raised on the part of the GCC that the president had a deliverable. He had some security guarantee that he was going to be able to present to them in writing in some form or fashion at Camp David. And we don't know exactly how, but that disappeared. And when they got the impression that he was just going to have a talk with them, they bailed out. And so the atmospherics of this, I think, are deliberately contemptuous on the part of the GCC toward Obama. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. This is an extremely unsettled moment in the Middle East.
All right, more on that ahead, but also up next, we're going to talk about the deadly train crash. It instantly sparked a political debate. We're also going to talk about Clinton Foundation donations and also the panel's winners and losers. The Friday Lightning Round is next.